Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to wait just a moment to see if we can get our usual crew joining us today. And in so doing, we're going to go ahead and get started with what we had always done with our prior streaming software and start today's episode with a very important thing that, quite frankly, we all should be doing, but certainly we should be making sure that our kids start the day doing this. So, with that, here is a 25-second or so clip to get us started on the right foot.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so I'm going to increase my volume here and all right, hopefully next week I'll have things even better figured out and I'll be able to go back to putting our show logo and other things on at the beginning and set up all the correct thumbnails and all that fun stuff that goes with learning the technology. But today I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because Lori is not able to join us, and she's the brains behind getting everything set up usually. So uh, I am sure that I messed up something somewhere in this setup, and I'm hoping she's actually going to be able to join us, hop on at least a little bit later. And If not, I was also hoping that Mr. Freedom would be joining us today. He had some great points and some questions that I thought you would enjoy hearing on today's live episode. So we'll see if he um, does, in fact, make it over today. But anyway, with that all being said, I'm going to again say hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm constitutional attorney Catherine Henry, and when Lori's able to make it, I will usually just be introducing myself as Constitutional Catherine, and she will be, of course, Liberty Lori, and we will go from there. Well, Jane, hello. Thank you for joining us. It's nice to see you on YouTube. And all right, everyone. So today's topic. Let me kind of pause for a minute and give a shout out to those of you who are new to joining us on our usual. Well, Mike's asking me, Mr. Henry, you should be in the show, not commenting on it. But anyway, my husband is commenting on YouTube asking about Rumble, and Rumble, we will have to replay this later because that's one of them that Lori normally sets up, and I didn't realize she wasn't going to be able to join us or have some of those things set up uh, before today's show, so I'll have to go back and get that done later. But at any rate, no, there's no Rumble today as of right now. But let me back up and say, usually we were going live on Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. And of course, Rumble is an RTMP connection, so there was no ability for us to see live comments at the same time unless Lori was watching a different screen for the comments there. But at any rate, we now are live streaming as well to when everything goes well to D Live and Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, but also Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and I think I'm forgetting one other one out there. But anyway, so there's at least 7 different platforms you can find us live streaming. But now you can also, if you're someone who likes to listen to an episode more than once, or maybe you're someone who really has a better time learning some of these concepts by being able to hear them as you go about your day and whatnot. Well, you can now find Restore Freedom Weekly on all the typical podcasting platforms from Pandora to Player FM, Google Podcasting, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, you name it. So we thank you to those of you who have already found us on there and who have hit the subscribe button, as well as who have started to download episodes there. So We thank you for your support in that regard. And to the just under 8,000 of you or so who have signed up one way, shape, or form throughout the last couple of years or year and a half on our newsletters, we are thankful that you have stuck with us, because although it has been a bumpy ride, technology and sometimes content wise, we now, I think I've done enough coding and putting things together and technological mixing and matching to be able to actually get a newsletter out to you every Sunday night or Monday. And it'll hopefully have a really good look and feel, and you'll be able to see all the greatest content that we've been posting about and doing videos about throughout the last week. So I appreciate all of you who are joining us via newsletter and the podcasting platforms and our regular social media. Don't forget, today is Tuesday. So, of course, we have our Tuesday true or false question that you can log on to. You can go right onto our website and answer the question there, or you can go onto our YouTube community channel or Telegram, Twitter, LinkedIn, I think Truth Social. There might be one other one. Maybe it's Parlor. I can't remember. But anyway, that does the true or false polls. So make sure to join us there. And if you're not on any of those platforms, don't worry. You could still get an easy way to get a link to answering the true or false question of the day, because I blasted out a link to all the other social media platforms where we regularly post to. So with that being said, oh, wow. My friend Jane on YouTube is telling me that the her leftist friends, or our leftist friends on LinkedIn, have decided to kick Jane off after being a professional on there for 20 or so years. So that's a bummer. And well, shoot, I can't see in this display what the full name is of our friend on YouTube. That's first name looks like Freedom, and I can't see what the last name or the rest of the username would be. But I will, I guess, throw this comment on there. Oh, True Faith, there, Through Faith, Freedom Through Faith. That's awesome. So I appreciate the appreciation, and we're going to go ahead and get started right now. So today's episode, and all of our episodes, are really premised on some basic concepts. And for those of you who are brand new to us, who have not caught the first 37 episodes that we've had this year, or the, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of videos that we've done, or live presentations that we've given throughout 2020 and 2021, please know that these are not things that these are not like right-wing conspiracy theories. These are not big assumptions that I'm making, or I just want you to take my word for it, because that's what most people out there want you to do, on the left and on the right. Most podcasters, most people that are bringing to you information, they often want you to just take their word for it. And I don't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to go ahead and look up these sources. But I can't do a show every week on topics that are based on the basics if I don't at least remind you of those basics, although we won't have time to go over all the specifics and the constitutional provisions and parts of the Declaration of Independence and other things that go into where I get that information from. But so if you're just joining us on one of those new live streaming platforms or podcasting platforms, please make sure to go back and check out our prior episodes. As far as the prior podcasting platforms, for sure, we will have the whole first season, which I guess this is technically our first season of Restore Freedom Weekly. We will have all of these episodes uploaded hopefully very soon, so you'll be able to go back. But if you're looking for the prior live events or live streams that we've done at, throughout 2020 and 2021 at various different locations, from the steps of the Capitol to sitting in my old office in Hudsonville, and different, news interviews or live televised debates, whatever any information you're looking for in that regard. You can probably, the best bet is still to go to our YouTube channel. We have quite a few of them up on Rumble, but not all yet. And so checking out our YouTube channel is, and the main one, the one that has over the 10,000 subscribers, not our backup channel that has like 200 or something like that. So anyway, so please make sure to check those other resources out. But and certainly if you're in a platform that you're live streaming this and you can ask questions and the comments will come through, if I see a question, I'm going to answer it. Unfortunately, not all of the platforms allow the questions to pull through. So I don't think LinkedIn comments or Twitter or Twitch pull through live, but I guess try commenting and we'll see if you're on one of those platforms. But so some of these basics I want you to recognize and remember, and these are the building blocks to every conversation we're going to have, are things that, again, these are not conspiracy theories. These are founded in the actual language of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and some basic concepts of having natural rights. We are, whether you're Christian or not, fact is we're created by God and we are given our rights by God. The government does not give us our rights. So we are not only given our rights by God, but we are sovereign over ourselves because that's how God designed it. And we've had full debates on things like Romans 13 and all the rest. But if you read everything together, you'll understand that we have the right to our lives. We have the right to liberty. We have some basic rights that simply come from God and not the government. But here in our country, in the United States, we have a system of government that is put into place by we, the people, literally put into place by us. We, the sovereigns, are, we've created this Republican form of government, Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, where we still maintain the full control and authority and sovereignty, but we are simply electing representatives in different capacities and different branches and levels of government to perform the day-to-day functions, to make sure we have our infrastructure and a common defense and a wide variety of things like that. When I say wide variety, it's actually very specific and limited. But the thing is, the government has and never has any rights. So if you're someone who's heard of the term states' rights, if you're someone who's heard of, that concept, or a lot of, I'll say, right-wing people or conservatives have talked about states' rights or even local government rights. That's literally not a thing. It does not exist. God did not bestow upon governments any kind of rights, and we, the people, gave no rights to the government ourselves. What we did, if you look at the 9th and 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitutions, as well as other places, but if you focus on the 9th and 10th Amendments, you'll see that we retain all of the rights that God gave us, even if we didn't specifically list them in the first 8 amendments or anywhere else in the Constitution. But the federal government and even state governments, they are delegated certain powers that we have specifically delineated, delegated, lent to the federal and state governments. And anything that we did not, excuse me, that we did not put into the Constitution for the government as a delegation of power, the government cannot do, literally. So I don't even know, I can't even think of, I can't fathom all of the ridiculous things that the government at all levels now does and thinks that it has the right to do. But I'm going to guess 75 to 90% of everything that every level of government does in every branch is actually outside of the bounds of what the Constitution set up for it to do. And by the way, if you look at Article 6 of the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and not even a state constitution can, subvert it or controvert it. And so, for example, if a state like Michigan happens to have some amendment to the state constitution that gets passed by some big force of evil this November that somehow puts abortion in the Constitution as a so-called right, that would not be constitutional. It would violate the US Constitution because every single person has the right to life, liberty, and property under the US Constitution. So you can't take someone's life because, oh, your state constitution says that kind of murder is just okay. So, at any rate, we have some of these basic concepts that we need to remember. So we have rights not given to us by God. We have ultimate control and authority in our government. And that's the purpose of these videos and podcasts, is to educate you and at least remind you that we all have to do something. This is not something that the lawyers can fix. Quite frankly, most lawyers still don't grasp these concepts and don't want to, quite frankly, okay? But it shouldn't be a government that is run by, judges and lawyers and politicians and, the political or financial elite. No, this is a government of we the people. And it's literally stay-at-home moms or, little grandmas baking cookies or, janitors at elementary schools or doctors, your local dentist, farmers, school bus drivers. I mean, it doesn't matter. Machinists, I would have to remember that as an occupation, considering that's what my husband does. But it's literally everyone in any kind of profession. You and I, we, the people, are the ones that are in the proper control and have the proper authority over our government, not the other way around. The whole purpose of government, again, this is probably one of the last of the basic points that we need to really let sink in order to understand today's topic, or quite frankly any topic, is that government's sole purpose, like government was instituted to protect our God-given liberties, so that when I'm exercising my rights that are given to me by God, I'm not infringing upon your ability to exercise your rights that are given to you by God. So the easiest example, I own property, and my neighbor Crystal, who used to be my neighbor but is not currently my neighbor, but if I am building something or doing something, listening to music or having parties or doing whatever onto my property on a regular basis, and it is directly interfering with her ability to use her property because trash from my parties is ending up on her property. I'm blaring the music disproportionately loud to how much property I own. And she's not able to use her property in any way that any of us would expect to be able to use their property. Well, then that's not okay. That's where our system of government stands. Thank you, Lori Patriot, for subscribing to us. I think that was on Twitch. I haven't seen that jumping dinosaur before, so I'm guessing that's one of our new platforms. But that is the purpose of government, okay? To make sure that we are not infringing upon the exercise of somebody else's rights when we are exercising our own rights. So let me make sure I am not missing. Okay, so somebody is asking on YouTube about the side curtains on the video. We are actually trying the phone method because of a few reasons and where it blasts out to see if this will be better. But if it doesn't work well, then I guess we'll go back to the full, I don't know, what is that called? Landscape mode. But, and we have somebody talking about abolish the ATF, repeal the NFA. I actually can't think of what that acronym is. What's the NFA? Remind me, please. But ATF definitely would need to go. That actually will come up in today's topic. But at any rate, okay, so today's topic, as we go ahead and dive in, is now that we got all those basics understood, we are going to talk about these conservatives. National Firearms Act. That's what I was thinking, but anyway, I was thinking more of an agency rather than an act. But okay, so the topic today, like I mentioned, is that we have some conservative, air quotes for those listening and not watching, state reps who have actually been increasing hunting regulations and violating the Constitution in the process. So again, there are at least 3 that are sponsoring a bill in the Michigan legislature right now. But trust me, if you're not in Michigan, you're still going to want to pay attention, because I can guarantee you some of these very same concepts, if not on the same topic, the same concepts, the same problems are happening in your state legislature, guaranteed. The topic is just kind of the icing on the cake here, okay? But these are 3 supposedly conservative legislators, 3 Republicans, that are touting this bill as eliminating penalties for DNR violations. It literally says eliminating penal code violations. Okay, so eliminating criminal penalties. Now, the actual bill is turning what is currently considered a supposed criminal violation of a specific, tiny little specific portion of this law and turning that into a civil infraction instead. It's not eliminating any kind of penalties at all. But what these 3 Republican state reps are doing, by the way, at least one of them is running for state Senate. And I have to say, she is, sugar, I can't remember what I found it last night and I wanted to share it with you today because this is important. It's not to pick on her, but I think perhaps that it is someone who just simply does not understand the Constitution. Like, really, the basics of the Constitution, certainly doesn't understand the process that she's participating in. So give us a second here. Yes, that's what it is. Okay. So I was going to show this to you today, but, well, quite frankly, I forgot. I'll probably end up throwing it into our Constitution segment recap slideshow that we'll share on Thursday. But at any rate, one of these state reps that has introduced this bill that they're calling the bill that is supposedly eliminating criminal penalties for DNR violations. Supposedly. This person, Michelle Hoitanga, the lead sponsor of this bill, has she has posted since at least 2020, if not prior to that, she had this post specifically about constitutional carry bills past the House committee. She had a picture of herself with one of her firearms and her name, Michelle Hoitanga, and underneath that, foot soldier for the Constitution. Foot soldier for the Constitution. This is concerning to me because, as my husband pointed out, that means these individuals are either really dumb when it comes to what their job is that they were elected to do, or they're really evil and they know what they're doing. Someone should not call themselves a foot soldier of the Constitution if they haven't even read the whole thing, if they don't understand the whole thing. You should not seek to be elected to serve as a legislator if you do not have a complete grasp of at least the most basic of concepts about the Constitution, let alone call yourself the foot soldier for the Constitution. So, what are some of the problems with this bill? Okay, well, this is, and did I? Okay, there it is. It's House Bill 6354. I don't think I had enough characters to squeeze it into descriptions on some of the platforms, but House Bill 6354 is the House bill we're talking about, currently in the Michigan State Legislature. It was introduced on August 17th of this year, and I believe it's making its way through committee, but I'm not sure of the exact stage of this. If you live in Michigan, you need to contact Michelle Hoytanga. You need to contact the other two state reps, Harris and Filler, also supposedly Republicans, and let them know this bill sucks and they need to make some significant changes to it before they think about actually enacting it into law. But they are claiming that they're eliminating penalties for DNR violations. But the main thing, this bill is not changing very much of the current statute that is involved, not very much at all. But what they are doing is changing a teeny tiny little sliver of just the 72-hour reporting period time for when you kill a deer. Okay. So when you harvest a deer, the DNR has issued this order, sound familiar from the last few years, that says that you have 72 hours to report this harvest or this kill to the DNR. And what they have done is, by this very small set of changes to this bill or to this law, they're saying that that particular tiny portion of this DNR order, if you violate that DNR order, it's not going to be a crime anymore. It's going to be a civil infraction. But all the rest of the pieces of the bill, of the law, remain untouched. And as the law currently stands, and this is just one law, it's not even 3 full pages long if you want to look it up. And I don't have the law in front of me itself, what the state law number is, but if you look up House Bill 6354, it'll tell you exactly which bill it is amending, which law it is amending. But at any rate, the rest of the bill, the rest of the law is being left untouched, and it is so convoluted and confusing that if you are somebody who likes to hunt, but you don't like to sort through a bunch of complex gobbledygook legal garbage, you're going to violate this law, 100% guaranteed. What if you like to hunt several different kinds? When I was in college, I was dating somebody who, lived on a family farm, and all the cousins and, all the family members liked to hunt pheasants and ducks and geese and deer and, whatever, right? Whatever the land provided, they hunted, and they ate it. It's not like they hunted it just for fun and then threw out the carcasses and it was a waste. They just, they were the typical, I'll say, Midwest family that liked to hunt. Okay. Well, under the current law that these state reps are already touching, they're already changing, and they're claiming that they're eliminating, the title of it is that they're eliminating criminal penalties. If you violate not only any of the confusing portions of this law, which there are 19 different provisions, then it's a misdemeanor and stiff penalties. But aside from that, if you violate any orders that the DNR puts out, then it's also considered, supposedly considered, a crime. Does that sound familiar to you guys from what's been going on in the last 2 years with governors and health departments and CDC and everything else? It's the same issue. That's why, even though I'm not big on topics relating just to hunters' rights or things like that, we need to stop and really take a look at what's going on, because these are supposedly conservative, foot soldier of the Constitution types of Republicans who are introducing these bills. So the bill that's being introduced is leaving all of the bad things in the whole law, except for carving out one teeny tiny little portion and saying, well, now when you violate one of these DNR orders, just about the 72-hour reporting window, that little violation will now be a civil infraction instead of a crime. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking that's kind of dumb, because it shouldn't be a civil infraction either. In fact, civil infractions shouldn't really exist, because you're not supposed to be denied your life, your liberty, or your property, fines, court costs, costs of prosecution, without full due process. So what are some of the issues? I mean, it's maybe some of you get it and it's just, it's obvious. It's, you know, it's mind-blowing to you how people don't get it. But maybe if you're new to hearing podcasts where we're talking about real things happening and not just going along with the way it's always been done, but tearing that apart, dissecting the way it's always been done, and recognizing that it's not just the Democrats that are destroying our country and trying to destroy our freedom, it's from within, then let me kind of explain some of this. Okay, so we have first of all, we have some great comments on here. Free men don't ask permission. I don't remember, Jason, if you happened to be watching our show. I think it was 2 weeks ago when we were talking about fences, ground covering ordinances, relating to things that really shouldn't be governed by our municipalities. Let me see if I missed any others. Wow, we've had a lot of great comments, and this is why Lori's supposed to be on here. Okay, if I am missing some of your comments or questions, I did not even see that comment and I put it on there. Okay, so we have, it looks like Sharon on Facebook has a good comment about gun laws. And it's quite a long question, and I can't take it all in right now while I'm trying to move on with this point, but bring it back up in just a little bit here, because I do want to focus on that. Does the DNR have rights to come on private property without a warrant? Do I have the right to escort them from my property? You know, my husband was just telling me last night that when he was in, maybe, I think one of my other friends is, hey, hold on a second. Lori is now joining us. I'm so sorry if I kept you back there. This doesn't quite work the same as.
Yeah, you can keep me back there. I do.
But Lori is going to be much better able to. So now we know you can't add yourself to the stream necessarily, but were you the one?
Well, I didn't.
To the comments.
I did do the picture, but I didn't add myself to the stream because it didn't look like you knew I was there, and I didn't want to throw things off. But this is.
Did you see?
I don't think this.
Guys, she left me floundering. She saw me failing miserably on my own trying to manage these comments, and she thought, I'm just gonna.
No, I didn't want to jump in the screen and really throw things. You were on a roll too. But you can keep me in the background. That's fine.
Let's there. You see, we have the top of your head, Lori.
I like.
So, zero authority. This is Mr. Freedom, Mr. Mike Henry, who is commenting, oh, look at that user profile, by the way. The odds are very slim that any of my children are watching this live stream, although Emma did tell me that instead of doing her schoolwork, sometimes she sits right outside my office door during the live streams and listens to the episodes. So at least she's learning some social studies during that time. But the older three kids likely not to be watching, but if one of them does, and it's our boy child, he would probably be intrigued to see that it is in fact a picture of himself playing a oh my gosh, I can't even think of the title of that. But anyway, Mike's guitar. So at any rate, that is our son Alex in that picture that's distracting me with its cuteness and his blonde curls. But anyway, Mike is reminding us that the DNR would have zero authority, constitutionally speaking, to be on your property to without a warrant and tell you that you're not doing something right, to ask you or demand you to show them some sort of hunting license or whatever. The thing is, what my husband informed me of is that in the years that he was hunting in Michigan, that there were laws on the books, which might still be there, that actually required you to show DNR officers your hunting papers, even on your own land, even on your own property, that it supposedly gave them the right to set foot on your private property and start questioning you or whatever. But remember, if there are laws like that, somebody needs to challenge them, because I don't have enough time in the day to challenge every single unconstitutional law. And that's not constitutional. We have a Fourth Amendment for a reason. Unreasonable searches and seizures, not okay. We have a right to privacy. We have a right to have the use of our property, an undeniable right to our life, our liberty, and our property without due process of law. So government can't just take away your property rights and then dish them back out to you under certain permissions or permits or licenses. And yeah, that's going full on out, talking about a lot of different types of licenses, permits, etc. But here's another question. What is the, and hello to Ruth in Michigan, what is the DNR's right when it comes to making laws? And that's actually the main thing. That is the main point that made me want to do a whole episode about this, because yesterday morning when I'm, spending literally 14 hours or more at my computer for chunks of time, trying to work out all the newsletter kinks and the where we're posting to and the podcasting platforms and getting all that set up, Lori sends me this message about this new sorry, I'm seeing a notification that I can't
House bill.
Oh, it went away. Okay. So Lori sent me this notification or this text message about this bill. And she's like, yeah, this is concerning to me. And I was like, okay, Lori, come on. Yeah, the DNR, hunting, Second Amendment rights, all that stuff is important, but it doesn't fit in line with the topics we've been recently covering all that great. But I said, okay, well, let's dig into this just enough to at least get a post out to people, because they need to know what's going on. And as I was helping to get the post put together, a few things were clicking for me and some red flags. And the more I looked at it, the more it was extremely alarming. So, all right. So we have the issue about these civil and criminal penalties, which I don't think I've really hit on enough, but we'll come back to it. It'll all make more sense. But basically what they're doing, what the law does, okay, set aside the bill for a minute. What the law currently does is it says you have all of these different things that you have to, that you have to abide by, all these different regulations. And, it's different for elk and wolf and moose and, waterfowl and mourning doves and all whatever, right? This one statute kind of talks about all these different things. And it's a misdemeanor if you do that. And it's, it's a civil infraction for a few things, but otherwise it's all crimes that you'd be committing. And oh, by the way, the rules and regulations for each kind of animal and each kind of hunting are different. And oh, by the way, there are separate, if you have a second offense for this type of, for moose, and again, who knows what the offense is, right? It could be something as not in your control whatsoever, which we'll go over in just a minute, but a second offense for moose, and you are barred from ever getting any kind of license ever again in your life to hunt, ever, for any kind of hunting. So you have how legit does that seem when our food rations have been, our food supply chain has been severely hindered and depressed and malfunctioning because of the policies and the restrictions and things that are happening at the federal government level, that you have a lot of businesses that are still struggling to provide and make it after all of the unconstitutional and often illegal government shutdowns through COVID. And so prices are higher, and some people, quite frankly, can't find work because the places that they were used to working at, especially if they're in more rural areas, they had to fold, they closed, they couldn't keep going. So families are still struggling to make ends meet. They're struggling to find jobs, or even if they have a job, they're struggling to make ends meet because the cost of everything is getting so much higher. And, maybe families that would just occasionally hunt here and there more for sport are now thinking, shoot, we better turn to hunting as our main sustenance, as our main way to survive and to be able to have something to eat. Well, shoot, if you have 2 violations of one of these ridiculous requirements or regulations in certain portions of this law, you will be literally barred for life from hunting. Does that seem constitutional? You're going to be barred for life from growing anything, from hunting, from breathing fresh air, from using water. Those are basics. You can't just say, barred for life, can't provide for yourself or your family. How dare you? Wow, the stupidity abounds. Now, what about some of these rules and regulations? Now, maybe you're someone who hasn't dug into, and Lori, if you find, let's see, Jane Locke, you've got the answer. Okay, so yes, it is truly impossible to comply. Patty on Facebook saying that it's impossible to comply. DNR requires to report online reporting, thus using an electronic device to commit a misdemeanor. Okay, so anyway, we're going to get to that in a second. But all right, so Lori, if you can find the statute, MCL, I think it might have been 30.40. I don't remember, but if you can find what law it is, where is this comment? Okay, I want to keep that up, but I had to make sure you were breathing and blinking and still with us.
I am.
So jump in and tell me when you found it.
Sure.
I'm
going to hide myself from stream while you do that, and then I'll pop in.
Okay. Well, I'll just put on, shoot, where's that comment? Okay, so we're going to put Ruth's question on here. What is the DNR's right when it comes to making laws? Oh, do you have it, Lori?
No, I was doing that so the comment wouldn't cover your face.
Oh, okay. I wasn't even looking at my face. I guess that makes better sense. Okay, so technological oopses abound, but good thing those of you on podcasts are not going to see any of these oopses. So anyway, so when it comes to okay, there's so many things wrong with this. I'm going to try to take it back. All right. So this law currently says that if you violate any of the requirements of this law, it's a misdemeanor, except in a rare circumstance they have carved out in section 19, where it's a civil infraction. But other than that, if you violate any of the parts of the law, it's a misdemeanor, it's a crime, right? Well, this law also says repeatedly, if you violate any orders or even interim orders of the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, then you're guilty of a crime. If you violate orders of the DNR, you're guilty of a crime. Like, let's let that sink in for a minute. Or are you just going to have to pipe up and interrupt me when you got that, okay? So I'm going to keep rolling. So, regulations. So I wanted to know, well, what do these orders look like? And this is something that I'm going to have to show you guys later in the Constitution segment recap, when you'll see different pieces of screenshots and things I'm going to share with you. But when I Googled for the wildlife conservation order in Michigan, it literally gives the URL and it gives the breadcrumbs. So you'll see that in a preview. You'll be able to see the main website, michigan.gov, and then you'll see the little caret saying DNR, and then another caret laws, and then another caret orders. Well, the second hit available when you're searching for Michigan Wildlife Conservation Order is michigan.gov, caret, managing resources, caret, laws, but then the subject under laws, it says orders in the state of Michigan. The DNR and Michigan Natural Resources Commission issue a variety of orders aimed at managing and protecting Michigan's natural resources. So they're saying right off the top, right off when you look at a Google search, Michigan is hitting you over the head with, by the way, laws and orders are synonymous. These are the same thing. If you're looking up laws, you're going to get orders, because the DNR's orders have the same force and effect as laws. I mean, it's literally integrated into how you pull up searches, what their what the terminology, the technological term would be breadcrumbs that you see on how you navigate their website to get to the orders. They're calling them laws. So what does it say? Well, sometimes you might have, like during COVID, there were some state legislatures that were like Michigan's. Michelle Hoitenga was one of the state reps that voted to do this, by the way. But anyway, that they would take some of the contents of the executive orders, and they would specifically say that order we are codifying. We are saying that everything in that order is now law. Okay, well, that's stupid, but it's actually different than what this is doing. This is saying, hey, the DNR is going to issue orders now and in the future, and every year they're going to issue orders, and when they do, they're considered the law. So the subject of those orders, what the substance is, you don't know ahead of time, and the legislature has said it's already going to be considered a law. Lots of problems with that.
Okay, you were looking for the MCL number for what they're revising?
Yes.
It's 324.40118 specifically.
Does that not sound like a bunch of BS to you? I mean, I know the laws,
If you,
but listen to that.
when I was,
That's just the state law. Okay.
when you were talking to me about it, I was doubting myself in that the way I was interpreting it. So I thought, well, why don't I pull up the law? And I did that. And then I was like, well, why don't I look at the act? And it actually took my computer a little while to load the full act. It was that big. So, and that's chapter 24, 324, 324.40118.
324.40118. So I knew there was a 40 in there somewhere, but that's ridiculous. Okay, so that's just a teeny tiny portion of it. Now, Lori said, and here's another point. Lori said when she went to open that act, she went to open chapter 324 on her computer, which can handle video processing and editing and all kinds of stuff. So it's not like the computer is old and slow. When she pulled up that PDF, her computer took a while and kind of struggled to get it all loaded because it's such a big document. That's a problem. Because that document doesn't even contain all the rules and regulations that are in these DNR orders. So when the requirements that we're actually talking about, the things that are being done, the things that somebody else, I don't know, Lori, if you can find that, it's this one right here. The things that we're talking about as far as the new requirements and whatnot being done, those are, Lori, you took it away. Those are not even part of all of those pages, right? In fact, the one thing that this bill is supposedly addressing is that, so in the newest round of orders from the DNR, there's a section, and it is section 3.103. 3.103.3, subdivision 3 or something of that nature. But anyway, subsection 3. Okay, so of that section, that's where, this is what it says: within 72 hours after retrieval of a deer and before transfer of possession of a deer, a person shall report their deer harvest as instructed by the department and retain the associated harvest confirmation number. A person who kills a deer may designate another person to report their deer harvest. Transfer of possession means one of the following. You give the entire carcass to another person for consumption. You give the entire carcass or head to a processor or taxidermist. You give the entire carcass or head to even the DNR. You can't even give the carcass to the DNR before you file this report with the DNR. Okay, so that is the portion of this rule. Now, this is an order, okay? Now, that little portion is a very tiny portion. In fact, when I went to pull it up, the link for this, it's actually part of another PDF that's available online, and the government has them divided by chapters. This particular chapter of the DNR order, and I think it's technically one order per year. This year's order, or this season's order, chapter 3's PDF alone is 49 pages of very tiny font, which you can't see because I'm doing the wrong screen layout today. 49 pages of largely single-spaced, tiny, ridiculously small font. That's just chapter 3. There were, I don't even know, there's hundreds, if not thousands, there's definitely hundreds of pages of this year's order alone. So you have all of the pages that were hundreds, large, of just that portion of this chapter, the statute about the DNR rules and regulations. And then on top of that, you have this one law that we're talking about, the 324.40118, I think it was. that one law that says, by the way, if you violate any part of this law, it's a crime. But if you violate any of the DNR orders, it's a crime. And that means that those hundreds of pages are things that you have to know so that you don't break that law and commit a crime. But on top of that, now you have to learn the hundreds, if not thousands of pages of DNR orders every single year. Every single year. Let me tell you, for example, the species regulations, that's chapter 3. It starts with elk open season. And this particular order, I know this changes every year because this one is referring to open season for 2022. That's literally written into this order. So this is something that changes at least every year, if not every 2 years. Who is going to memorize or even have the ability to understand all of the different requirements when they're that voluminous and when they change every year or two? Name one hunter anywhere in the state of Michigan or in any state who would be able to keep up with the continually changing hundreds, if not thousands, of provisions that if he broke one of them, it would be considered a crime. I can't do that, and I have thousands of laws memorized. That's insane. Does that sound constitutional to you? Does that sound like a government comprised of people, we the people who have the ultimate sovereignty, control, and authority, where we employ, we hire, we elect people to represent us and to ensure that that our rights are protected and that we don't infringe upon the rights of somebody else in the exercise of our own rights? Mike, this is where Mike should be on screen right now because Mike said it to me last night.
Sorry, threw you off.
There we go. Mike said to me last night, what right do they think that they are protecting by implementing these rules and orders and laws so lengthy, so ridiculous? What right are they protecting? They're not protecting any right. Okay. So some of you in general might think, well, there's a whole concept of, it's wildlife conservation. It's just so that, those hunters over there don't hunt excessively every year and basically wipe out a species or make it so that nobody else that's responsible would hunt that season because there's not enough of that particular species to go around and they need to repopulate. Or some hunters might be so reckless or irresponsible that they'll completely wipe out a species, and that would be terrible. That's not what's going on here. But let's think about this. Okay, let's take it back a second. And well, first of all, we have a comment here, which the way my screen is showing is not showing me the whole thing. So let's see if I can stretch my screen out so I can read the whole thing. Okay. We were hunting, and this is Roger on Facebook. We were hunting on our own private property and were illegally charged for a misdemeanor and sentenced not to hunt for 1 year. The deer taken were legally tagged. Happened several years ago. I sure as hell hope that you fought that. And I sure hope that you're never going to let them get away with that again because, and people, listen to what was it, I think last week, our Way to Get Involved challenge. I challenged you to find an average Joe somewhere, someone who is just simply trying to utilize their God-given liberties and decided enough is enough and they're going to stand their ground in the right ways. They're just going to stand their ground and fight for freedom. I urged you to find someone who is in that kind of a situation and support them. Maybe it's somebody like me. Maybe it's somebody like Kristen Megan. Maybe it's somebody like Lando Estrada. Maybe, oh, what's David's last name? Lori. What's Blair? David Blair has his own set of stuff. There's quite a few freedom fighters that have been charged with one way, shape, or form. You know, Marlena at Marlena's Bistro over in Holland, whether criminally or administratively charged with something, find those people, pay attention. They're all around you now. Find someone like that and support them financially, support them in prayer, support them, kind words. Reach out to them and let them know you're supporting them. Volunteer. Say, hey, I'm really good at computers. Is there anything that I could do to help you in your fight for freedom? Or I'm really good at, I don't mind walking and I know neighborhoods really well. Is there, you know, are you doing anything that door knocking and letting people know about a certain cause would be, you know, fruitful? Those are the kinds of things that we need to be doing. That was last week's, I think it was last week's way to get involved challenge. So stand behind someone who, for example, might be like this, was it Roger, I think on Facebook, who, let's see, trying to look right now. Yes, that one, thank you. Find someone like Roger who is doing nothing wrong and who's not going to just sit back and take it. Somebody who's fighting it, who's going to say, I'm pleading not guilty because it's not a crime. In fact, I want to try to fight it. And then, if they don't already know about me, direct them my way, show them links to the website and all the legal briefs we have on there. I can't tell you how many people that have ended up having to represent themselves or even coach their attorneys by taking chunks, if not, you know, basically large portions of my legal briefs, my appellate briefs, my briefs, you know, my motions to dismiss, and utilizing those resources and those laws and those parts of the Constitution and those cases to put everything together to file their own stuff in court to be able to fight to dismiss a case or to fight back against this ridiculousness. Yep. This is Ruth. I'm sharing sharing on screen another situation where the DNR is just all over in people's faces, violating tons of parts, but certainly the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. And man, there are so many good comments and questions, but let's see.
Did you see the long one from John? I wasn't going to post it because it's so long, but essentially the DNR came in without a warrant, rummaged through the house, and then found out they were at the wrong house. That's a long one by John on Facebook.
I did not.
That's a short of it.
Wow.
His protest that he was not a poacher fell on deaf ears until they found out they were at the wrong house. They were going through his freezer. I mean, talk about due process right there. In this whole guilty until innocent. When law enforcement is, I mean, we law enforcement is human too, so they make mistakes. But you would think when you're gonna go do a warrant type activity, before you even try to go to the door, you would triple check the address and just make sure that you're at the right place. It's like they're hungry wolves to get anybody for anything. That's the way they're acting.
Yeah, and then we have this this comment here. Just something. Oh, okay, so what are some of the issues though? Okay, let's look at this. So in addition to how voluminous these are, that nobody could ever read all these, let alone memorize them, let alone be able to follow them. let's look at some of the, well, let me put it this way. By having the law, this bill that Michelle Hoytanga and these other 2 state reps that are supposedly conservative Republicans, foot soldiers for the Constitution, are implementing, what they're doing is they're taking just one tiny piece, which is just what I read to you, that 72-hour reporting period, and saying, okay, if you violate that part of this order, then it's a civil infraction. You're still in trouble. You're still going to have problems with the government. You're still going to have your liberties taken away, but we won't throw you in jail. That's the only thing that she did with that bill. She didn't eliminate any penalties. She just said, well, instead of possible jail and fines and court costs, you're just going to have fines and court costs for that little tiny 72-hour thing. But here's the thing. What she left in there then was the rest of it. By taking out or changing, she didn't actually take anything out. By changing just that one little bit, what she's doing is saying all the rest of the law is okay. So all the rest of the law makes it so that if you violate any of this ridiculous crap that nobody can keep up on, it's a crime. If you violate any of these DNR orders or even interim orders that are put into place, it's a crime. What does this do? This means that they're allowing for more reporting regulations, because there's hundreds that are just in these orders that are not even actually codified into the law, but supposedly enforced as though they are law. And what about this? They require inconsistent and impractical reporting requirements. Well, what do I mean by that? Let's think about some of this. Let's assume for a minute that the purpose of having to report itself is justifiable, constitutionally speaking. Let's assume that just for a moment. Okay. So in just this small section, this chapter 3, which is called Species Regulations, right? This is just a tiny fraction of the full order that's out this year, okay? But in this small little section, listen to how many inconsistencies there are in reporting methods. When it comes to elk, we're looking at section 3.6 of this year's order. Any elk that are wounded or killed with an improper tag and not recovered must be reported to a department employee as instructed in the training session. What training session? And how are they instructed? And what if I had a training session that was different than a training session that you went to? And what if in the training session, the person who was doing the training was off their rocker that day and said, oh, hey, yeah, I'm just going to give out Bill's cell phone number, and you just call Bill, send him a text, whatever you want, hit him up on Facebook. But this is legally required, okay? That with elk under Rule 3.6, Section 3.6 of this order that's considered law, that you have to report to a department employee as instructed in the training session. Super specific. Okay. What about in section 3.103? Well, that's the one with the 72 hours. 72 hours you have after you kill a deer, a person shall report their deer harvest as instructed by the department. Where in here does it say where it's instructed? It doesn't. It literally does not say anywhere in this whole chapter, at least, of how they're instructing you to report it. So it doesn't say in the law itself how you have to report it. And it doesn't even say in the stupid order how you're supposed to report it. But you get to go to all these other links and clicks and things, and you find out, Lori, this year, one of these regulations essentially is, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are, the department has said that you will now have to make these reports for deer through their website, or you could download the DNR app. But you have to do it online. You literally cannot call in, and you cannot file any kind of paper, and you cannot go in person. You literally have 72 hours to go online. Now let's think about that for a minute and use some common sense. Let's say, and again, I'm focusing on Michigan, but this I would think would be similar in every state. You decide you're going to go on a week-long camping trip and hunting trip. So you go to the vast reaches of northern Michigan, for example, and you're hunting. And you are perhaps maybe in a cabin. I know, strange, right? You are away from civilization because you are camping, hunting, getting away, right? So you're a really good shot. And man, you got a deer that first day of your trip, but it's supposed to be 7 to 10 days that you're gone. You got your kids with you, you got your brother, you got your nieces and nephews. Like, this is a whole family thing, right? This is something you love to do, and you worked your butt off all year long. This is your one vacation, and you're going to use every day that you got. Week and a half. This is all you're asking from the world. Just leave me alone for a week or week and a half. But because you're such a good shot and you got that deer on your first day of your trip, and you don't have enough bars of cell phone service on your phone in your camp to get the internet or to be able to use the functionality of the DNR app, you're not allowed to call it in. You're not allowed to go see someone in person. You literally have to leave to go find where you have internet. Or what if you're someone that has one of those dumb phones, right? I have family members that have only recently finally updated to a phone that actually has a screen with, color and whatnot. What if you're someone, though, who you're visually impaired, or there's something where you can't, like you're my husband, you can see far enough to hunt, but man, you cannot see your screen on your phone without your reading glasses to save your life, unless your wife is right next to you reading it for you. What if you're in that situation? What if you lost your reading glasses and you can't see fine details on a phone to be able to punch in numbers and, specifics and whatever else they want to know? You're literally going to be violating this order and then violating the law. You wouldn't know that by reading the law itself, because the law itself doesn't say you have to report this way, and the order itself doesn't say that. But you look at the law refers to some orders. You find the most current order. Hopefully it's the right one. You read that. That doesn't actually say how you have to report. So then you go to the department itself, you go to their website, you go to their app, and then you look and see, oh, they just say online that you have to report online. That's a problem. You would think someone who, in full hunting gear and a camouflaged long gun, would call themselves foot soldier of the Constitution, but by doing so would recognize there's some really stupid things in this law, in this order, and in this whole setup with the DNR that maybe shouldn't be solidified in Michigan statutes. Okay, so that's one of the inconsistencies, right? So far we have contacting section 3.6, contacting a department employee to make the report as instructed in the training session. And then you have section 3.103, that you have to report the deer harvest as instructed by the department, which now apparently is online on their website or on an app. Let's see. And then this is 3.702. So this is section 3.702 of the current wildlife conservation order in Michigan. And this says that on the same day as killing a wolf, a licensee shall report the kill by calling a department designated telephone number. So again, in this order that changes frequently, they don't even have the telephone number. They just say calling a department designated telephone number. So we have three very vague and totally contradictory ways, depending on what kind of animal it is. So you have to contact a department employee as instructed in a training session, or you may have to report a deer harvest as instructed by the department, which doesn't actually say how they're instructing you, but currently their website tells you you have to do it online. Or if it's a wolf, then you have to report the kill by calling a department designated telephone number. Not that you're given the actual telephone number in this order or in the law, but you're going to have to be able to figure that out. So you're going to have internet access to be able to do that. So sometimes you have to call, sometimes you're not allowed to call. It would be illegal to try to call and make a report of a deer harvest. And sometimes you have to do it however the training session told you. And if you don't remember what was said in the training session, or if you were given different information at your training session from somebody else's training session, then by all means, you're going to end up violating the law. We don't know how that would be. I literally, right now, after reading all of this, I have no clue what you would have to do, what kind of reporting you would have to do in order to follow this law. But I certainly can't figure out what it is you would have to do in order to not violate the law. That's absurd. So what this bill does that they're doing, it leaves all of that in there. It leaves all of that alone, but they still say in the title of it, oh, it's eliminating criminal penalties for DNR violations. No. And then, like I talked about, it actually is codifying then the DNR orders. It is recognizing those as legally enforceable regulations. So what's the biggest issue here? Well, that goes to dang it, somebody said it better than I did. And dang it, there were way too many good comments coming in today, especially on YouTube. Lots of conversation going on. But I can't find it. I can't find what I'm looking for. Anyway, wherever the comment was, and for some reason it looks like I'm not even seeing, oh yeah, I'm seeing some Facebook ones, but it's been a little while since we've had some Facebook comments, at least compared to YouTube. At any rate, so the biggest concern here for me is that you have a state rep calling herself the foot soldier of the Constitution, who's currently running for state Senate, along with these other two guys who are supposedly also Republicans. These are the Republicans doing this. These aren't Democrats, who have this bill, who are taking out a tiny little portion of a requirement, the 72-hour deer reporting requirement. They're taking that, they're not out. No. They're saying you still have to do that. But they're saying, well, if you violate that part of the order, that part will be a civil infraction where we could still give you fines and all kinds of other consequences, but we can't throw you in jail. But what they're doing then is still making it so that you have to follow the DNR orders. And they're saying that all the other things in that law that they're leaving untouched, that's totally fine, that all of those things are supposedly illegal. In fact, they are saying it's okay to take a DNR order that doesn't even exist yet and say that has the same force and effect of law, that the DNR can go ahead and make any kind of laws that they want. In fact, the state of Michigan is conflating the two terms and interchanging law and order as the same, that this order is the same as a law. In fact, if you look at the order itself, it's saying it's unlawful, like section 3.702, wolf hunting, the title of it, wolf hunting, kill tag requirements, reporting requirements, baiting, legal weapons, exceptions, hunt with a dog, unlawful acts. And quite a few of these at the end of, issuance of deer or elk kill tags, blah, 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 unlawful acts. That's the title of that section. They are saying it's unlawful for you to do any of these things that they've put into these orders. Hundreds of pages of orders. They're saying it's unlawful. Okay, so what about the Constitution here? First of all, we have the whole deprivation of life, liberty, and property, right? We have some big issues there. But let's look at some of the arguments that I brought to the Michigan Supreme Court, that I argued in the Michigan Supreme Court in 2020 against the governor's executive orders. It's the same argument that I then said to the Michigan Supreme Court in October 9th of 2020. I said, hey, the governor is just going to switch and start using the public health code. So she's not going to use the EPGA. She's not going to use the EMA anymore. She's not going to have executive orders doing her dirty work. Now she's going to go through the health department, MDHHS, and she's going to issue these same orders doing these same shutdowns and same other requirements, masks, you name it. And those are going to be done through emergency orders that are, supposedly allowed through the public health code. I told the Supreme Court this October 9th, 2020, and I said those are just as unconstitutional as the executive orders that you just declared unconstitutional under the EPGA of 1945. So I urged the Supreme Court of Michigan in 2020, please go ahead and tell the governor, tell all of Michiganders everywhere, business owners, individuals, state reps, local officials, tell everyone that not only is the EPGA unconstitutional and that a governor cannot issue executive orders under there ever, but tell everyone that any other law that tries to do the same thing is also unconstitutional for the same reasons. Now, the Supreme Court in Michigan did not do a good job of explaining really why those orders were unconstitutional, or why the EPGA, Emergency Powers of Governor Act of 1945, why it was unconstitutional. The only thing they really focused on was non-delegation, was the separation of powers. But the problem is their whole discussion on that was actually off base, because they're talking about separation of powers. They're talking about the non-delegation aspect as though they are doctrines, philosophies, theories that have come about in the course of politics and in the course of these court cases. But guess what? A lot of states, including Michigan, if you look at the Michigan state constitution, separation of powers and non-delegation, those aren't mere doctrines or philosophies. Those are actual words of the state constitution. There's literally a section of the Michigan state constitution. I think it's Article 3, Section 2. I want to say Florida state constitution also has the same thing, and theirs might be Article 2, Section 3, I think, but Article 2, Section 3, yes. And there's slightly different wording, but, in a lot of respects the same. But those say, just focus on the Michigan Constitution for a second here, okay? So, I actually have it open, and I haven't actually touched this book in at least a month. Separation of powers of government. That is literally the words of the Michigan State Constitution. Article 3, Section 2, separation of powers of government. Okay, that's the title. This is the wording. The powers of government are divided into 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. no person exercising powers of one branch shall exercise powers properly belonging to another branch of government, except as expressly provided in this Constitution. And dare I say, if they're exercising a power of another branch of government, it's not constitutional, because we're still guaranteed a Republican form of government, and we're still supposed to have 3 distinct branches. And so when you have, I don't know, different commissions like are in the Michigan Constitution now after some fairly recent amendments that exercise parts of the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, and these individuals aren't even elected. Whew, that's not constitutional. But a lot of state constitutions come out and say separation of powers, say that you cannot delegate. But let's look at something that the Michigan State Supreme Court said in 2020, which it said, I believe this, yes, it said this in the order that would have come out on, I believe, October 2nd. It was one of the cases that I was arguing in front of the Michigan Supreme Court in 2020. And this is one of the things that they got right. They said, it is the responsibility of this court, of the Michigan Supreme Court, in recognizing the separation of powers to ensure that the legislature does not exceed its constitutional authority in making the law, okay? Either by encroaching upon the powers of another branch, doing things that don't belong to the legislative branch, or by relinquishing its own powers to another branch. But also what's important is that the same Supreme Court in the same case in 2020 said that the legislature's power is only to make laws, not to make legislators. The legislature's power is only to make laws, not to make legislators. What do you think the legislature tried to do under the EPGA when they said the governor can issue these executive orders that can supposedly dictate every aspect of our lives? They were trying to make the governor a legislator. What do you think the legislature was trying to do under the public health code when they said that the local health departments or the state health department, MDHHS, is allowed to promulgate orders that can supposedly prohibit the gathering of people for any purpose? They're trying to allow the public health officers to become legislators. Okay, what about, oh, Lori's not live streamed, not showing on the live stream, so I can't see if I'm going to say this correctly. What about MCL 324.40118? Was that it, Lori? You're muted.
Yes, that was right.
Okay, so 324, look at state law in Michigan, MCL 324.40118. I told you guys I got a lot of laws memorized. That law, and what they were doing is they're saying, well, sure, we're going to throw a bunch of provisions on. We're going to throw a bunch of restrictions on that are not constitutional by themselves, by the way, for a variety of reasons. But we're going to give you all these restrictions when it comes to hunting. And on top of that, we're going to say that you have to follow the DNR's orders because those orders are considered law. So that we are going to say that the DNR now is comprised of a bunch of mini legislators. They get to legislate. They get to tell you what the law actually is. Okay, so this was from 2020, right? This case that I'm telling you about. Clearly, this is not okay. Clearly, it violates the Constitution. I mean, they're different branches of government we're talking about. We're talking about the executive branch, which is meant to enforce the laws. And they're being supposedly given these powers of legislative authority, which belong in the legislative branch, last I checked. And like I mentioned, that explicitly violates the state constitution and certainly violates several other provisions of our US Constitution. But keep in mind, every single state legislator is required to take the oath of office to uphold the US and state constitution. Every single state rep, every single state senator, every single one of them, every single DNR officer in the state of Michigan is required to take the oath of office to uphold the US and Michigan constitutions, every single one of them. Quite frankly, every single law enforcement officer across the whole country is required to do that. Yet they will say things like, well, you think that's against the Constitution, but I'm not the judge. You can argue that in your day in court. They don't even know what the law is. They don't even know what the supreme law of the land is. Let's start with that. Even if you don't know what the laws are in your state, at least know what the stinking Constitution says, because it controls everything else. If you don't know what the Constitution says, you have no business being a DNR officer. You have no business being a police officer. You have no business being a state rep. You even have no business being a local county clerk or a township official. Absolutely no business. In fact, those people who served with me on the Georgetown Township Board, 7th largest township in the state of Michigan, who decided that they would vote constantly for ridiculous regulations, they would vote against freedom. They have no business. Yes, Jim and Becky and John, you know exactly who you are. You have no business serving in government. What's worse is that I'm pretty sure two of them work in the school system. I think 2 of them work in the school system. At least one of them I know works in the school system with our youngsters. And that's the kind of philosophy they bring to the table. And one of those individuals I just mentioned is an attorney who thinks he knows the law when he doesn't understand the supreme law of the land, and would roll his eyes every time I would mention the Constitution in our board meetings. But we have those concepts, but let's think about this. It's not just a case from 2 years ago, and it's not just a case from Michigan. Let's look at what Justice Scalia said in 1989. Mistretta, I'm totally going to mispronounce that, but Mistretta v. the United States, 488 U.S. 361 for anybody who wants to look. You can start on page 413, just for anybody who wants to look. And I want you to listen to what he's saying. He's talking about the delegation cases that they have, that they're talking about well, he says the major focus is that the power to make law cannot be exercised by anyone other than Congress. I'm talking about federal laws. The power to make law cannot be exercised by anyone other than Congress. He also then says, he's talking about this so-called excessive delegation is how they've been, the cases have really revolved around, is there an excessive delegation? Did the executive or legislative branch delegate excessive authority to one of the other branches of government? So he says that term is used because it's convenient to call it that, but he says what is really at issue is whether there has been any delegation of legislative power, which occurs when Congress authorizes the exercise of, it's authorizing executive or judicial branches of government to do something. And then he says it's without adequate standards. I would say there's no standards that can even begin to cover here. Justice Scalia didn't even quite get it right here. But what he did do is point out to something that John Locke said almost 300 years ago, at least it was over 300 years ago now. The power of the legislative is being derived from the people by a positive voluntary grant and institution done through the Constitution, that it can be no other than what that positive grant conveyed. They cannot exercise power beyond the power we gave them in the Constitution. That's what John Locke is saying, which for the legislature is only to make laws, not to make legislators. John Locke said, which was quoted by Justice Scalia in 1989, that the legislature has only the power to make laws and not to make legislators. Not to make legislators. The legislative can have no power to transfer the authority of making laws and place it in other hands. That's been the understanding of what it really takes to follow the Constitution from day one. But those who don't like the Constitution, instead of, trying to change it to make it some other form of government, have instead decided to ignore it or, build upon this focus on case precedent that they call case law. And they even Scalia gets so far away from what the words of the Constitution actually say. But you can even look back into the Supreme Court of the United States. And I'm focusing on these to let you know that in your state, for those of you watching in Florida or in any other state other than Michigan, it's not just the Michigan Supreme Court that has said this, okay? Justice Harlan for the United States Supreme Court, well over 100 years ago, in 1892, was talking about a decision that came out of the Ohio Supreme Court. And he said, the true distinction, as Judge Ranney, speaking for the Supreme Court of Ohio, has well said, is between the delegation of power to make the law, which necessarily involves discretion as to what the law will be, and conferring authority or discretion as to its execution under the law. So if you're making the law, if you're determining what the regulations are, that is exercising legislative authority. And even in 1892, the US Supreme Court understood you can't do that. And that's not from a dissent. And that's not from just a state Supreme Court case. That is from the US Supreme Court well over 100 years ago. So back to John Locke's words and back to those recent 2020 words from the Michigan Supreme Court that came out of the case that I was blessed enough to have the opportunity to argue in front of the Michigan Supreme Court against the governor's executive orders. The same thing holds true today when it comes to talking about the ability of the DNR to issue orders of any kind, let alone ones that would be literally enforced as though they were law. And we must remember those words as saying that the legislature's power is only to make laws and not to make legislators. So not only did these Republican, supposedly conservative state representatives and candidates, at least one of them that I know of is a candidate for state Senate, is advocating as a foot soldier for the Constitution, nonetheless, is submitting bills where they are intentionally adopting and accepting rules that DNR puts out in these orders and saying, yes, you have to follow DNR orders as though they are law. And you have to follow provisions that are totally complex. Michelle Hoytanga has never read all of Chapter 324. I bet you anything of that. She's never read the entirety of 2022's DNR order. So how could she possibly know how convoluted and ridiculous those things are that she is codifying and accepting by leaving all the rest of that law, MCL 324.40118. She's leaving all the rest of it in the law. By having House Bill 6354 written as it is, it does not eliminate criminal penalties. It makes one tiny little violation of an order a civil infraction with penalties instead of a crime, and all the rest of the ways that you can violate the orders from the DNR are still crimes under this law. So make sure that you know whether your deer harvest is supposed to be reported by phone within the same day, or it's supposed to be online or through their app within 72 hours, or whether you're going to need internet service at your campsite to report this ridiculous requirement, or whether it's a wolf or an elk or any other type of reporting regulation, whether you're supposed to call, whether you're supposed to report through the app, or whether you're just supposed to do it however you were told in your instruction time, in your training session, whatever that looks like, whatever they told you that day. We don't know, but I'm sure it should be enforced as though it was law. But I'm going to also kind of let you know of something else ridiculous. If you've hung on this long, then your mind is going, and you can't possibly think that there'd be anything else so terribly wrong. But if any of you have heard of this little part of the Constitution called the Equal Protection Clause, that means there is equal protection under the law. It also means that they can't use laws against you to, enforce criminal or civil penalties against someone, or regulations against an individual or business, when they're not going to enforce those against other individuals or businesses that are in the same kind of situation. So let's look at this, though. This is part of the order that, again, this bill and this law are saying are just as enforceable as the law itself. And this is 3.100B. And it is the prohibition of possession of free-ranging deer carcasses or parts thereof, reporting and checking requirements, movement of deer carcasses or parts thereof. That is the long title of this section of this order of the parts that are referenced by this particular statute that's a part of the bigger act. Yes, that's how convoluted this bullcrap is. Except as otherwise provided in this section, a person shall not do any of the following with a deer harvested in Montcalm County its entirety. I hope my husband's listening to this, because the places I'm going to talk about are literally our old stomping ground, if you will. The area where I was running for state rep back in 2015, 2016. Montcalm County, in its entirety. Otisco Township, that's where we lived when we got married. Orleans Township, Ronald Township, our friends Ken and Darlene lived there. North Plain Township of Ionia County, or Nelson, Spencer, Cortland, Oakfield, Grattan, or Cannon Townships of Kent County. So this little portion of Northwest Kent County and I was going to say Northeast, but really it's the west portion, the entire west portion of Ionia County, and then all of Montcalm County. If you are hunting there, if you're hunting deer there, you cannot transport the deer outside of those townships. You cannot possess the deer outside of those townships. And the only exception to that is basically if you're taking it to a registered processor or a licensed taxidermist. So if you wanted to process your own meat or do your own taxidermy work, then you're SOL, because you're not allowed to do that. In fact, you're not allowed to even possess a deer carcass. If you live, let's say you were like us and you lived in the city of Belding, because like us, you lived in Otisco Township and your house was a farmhouse so old that it literally predated all county records. There were no county records that could acknowledge when this house was even built, because the very first records available, when those came around, this house was already there. Okay, so your house is so old and so small for your vastly growing family that you needed to move to a bigger house. So you found one that was a foreclosure and you moved to the farthest north edge of city limits, right on the edge of city limits. And so you bought this house, which is abutting to city forest behind and neighbor owned forest to the north. And but you like to hunt. In fact, you'd probably want to go to your father's house. If you're my husband, you're gonna want to go to your father's house, which is in Otisco Township, at least as of now. You're going to go to Otisco Township and you're going to go out to his 40 acres and you're going to take your gun from your gun cabinet that's stored there until your brother gets it. And you're going to go to you're going to go out to some place in the 40 acres and you're going to shoot a deer. Well, under this regulation that they're saying is law, you would not be able to transport that deer back to our house in the city limits of Belding, because you're transporting it outside of Otisco Township and you wouldn't be able to process or clean the deer there. But you could stay in your dad's house and clean it there, or you could bring it to somebody registered as a processor or licensed as a taxidermist to bring it to somewhere in Belding in the city limits. That's just an example. What possible right did they think that they are protecting by issuing such asinine restrictions? I can't possibly fathom. But at any rate, that is just an example. That is a gem that I was more, I'm giving you guys entertainment, but also letting my husband know as well, because he wanted to know if I found anything good in my research and my reading last night preparing for this episode. And I said, oh, I sure did. And I would love to tell you about it. But then, it was already like 12:30 when I was done sitting at my computer. So needless to say, I didn't have enough brain capacity to tell him all about this. Those are the provisions I want you guys to think about today. Those are the concerns that I have. This is 3 Republican legislators, one that's at least a self-proclaimed foot soldier of the Constitution, who is introducing a bill that is only making minor changes to the current law. And by the mere fact of leaving all the rest there and changing the little bit that she did, she is saying that, yes, if you violate a DNR order in one of these very small number of ways, then it is still considered illegal and it's a civil infraction. But if you violate in any of these other ways, it's a crime. And if you violate it twice, in certain ways, by violating it twice, it's going to mean that you are literally forever, for life, stripped of your legal ability to hunt in the state of Michigan. This is coming from a state rep from an area with a lot of rural territory, from someone who poses in hunting gear and talks about the Second Amendment as though it's her best friend. So if I were you, I would urge you to contact State Representative Hoitanga as well as Harris and Filler, who are the sponsors of this bill. And I say sponsors because, in Michigan, the legislators don't even write the bills that they get paid the big bucks to write. When they get paid with all the stipends and everything else, as well as their salary, over $100,000 a year, they actually don't write the bills they were elected to write. No, that would be the legislative council that does that. And most of them don't even read that. They wait for the analysis to come out, telling them what the bill does and what it will do and what it won't do and what its pros and cons are. And that's sometimes how they make their decision. But usually from there, they actually wait to see what leadership of their party tells them to do, because they don't want to lose being the chair of any committees or having the support of the party. No, 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 no. They want to make sure they stay in the good fight and they can be there for you. And so that's how they justify it. But I don't even know if Michelle Hoitanga or these other guys have even read the bill that they have sponsored, let alone read the entire statute that it pertains to, let alone read the entire chapter of the laws on point or that act, let alone read the order that they're codifying that is hundreds of pages long and violating your constitutionally protected God-given liberties in a vast number of ways.
I wanted to share something kind of funny. While you were talking, I got an email from the DNR. Apparently, September 24th is National Hunting and Fishing Day. And they have a little picture, meme type thing. And it says, to provide that deserved national recognition to recognize the aesthetic, health, and recreational virtues of hunting and fishing, and to rededicate ourselves to the conservative and respectful use of our wildlife and natural resources.
I need that email. I definitely need that email. We're going to have some fun with this week. So I hope those of you who don't necessarily, like hunting, I've hunted myself, I said I dated someone who was an avid hunter and his whole family were avid hunters back when I was in college, and we were together for the better part of, I think, 8 years or 9 years, or something on and off. Anyway, a lot of years. I spent a long time on that farm, and yes, I learned how to hunt and farm, and didn't really teach me how to fish, but eventually my husband might do that, but we're getting the waves first before we're worrying about fishing. But at any rate, I am probably, I'll say, the typical person who respects the institution of hunting and also the rights that are inherent in it, but also understands the common sense that it's a way to provide for your family, literally to eat, or to eat the meat and sell the fur or whatever other pieces there might be with that. And at any rate, it's something that we shouldn't take for granted. I mean, Thanksgiving's just around the corner, and we're going to be, our children are going to be learning about the Pilgrims and all that entails. What would the Pilgrims have done if they weren't allowed to hunt? If they had to follow something that was so ridiculous? Oh, and here's the best part that just occurred to me. Okay, so you have these crazy, I'll just say the crazy liberals that are the ones that are fighting against the Second Amendment in the concept that they're saying, well, the Second Amendment, at the time the Second Amendment was put in place, you didn't have automatic, rifles, you didn't have, anything like that. You had muskets. Okay, It's the same people that turn around and say, well, yeah, you got to follow the DNR orders that say you have to report your deer kill by using an app. Well, when hunting started, before the constitutions were ever even written, there was no app. So why is it that you think we can't use the guns that now exist, but we have to use reporting procedures that were literally impossible due to the lack of technology back then? Interesting. Let's see. Lori, you left. So at that rate, oh my gosh. Oh, you're muted again.
I said, I'm still here. I'm just sitting in the background.
Well, it has been quite a long episode. No wonder why I'm starving. Lori, is there anything else that you feel like I have, gotten so far into the weeds that I have forgotten to mention that would be important for us to say today?
Not that I can think of offhand.
Okay. So, without any further ado, I want to thank all of you who have been joining us today. We really appreciate the comments, especially the great conversation coming in on YouTube and Facebook. And we'll definitely check out the other platforms where we're streaming on Twitch and Twitter and LinkedIn, and later on Rumble and DLive to see what conversation has been there. We encourage you to go ahead and answer our true or false question of the day that we have posted on Truth Social and Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, our website, and I can't think, Lori, if there's any other place. Is Parlor one of them?
Maybe. You're making me think too hard.
But we invite you to do that. You're able to answer those polls until about 10 o'clock tonight, where we will then post the answer on each of the platforms where the poll is posted. Telegram was the other one I was forgetting. So please join us on any of those platforms to answer today's true or false question about this topic. And join us tomorrow for our Wednesday Way to Get Involved challenge. That will be in the form of a post on all of our social media platforms. And again, Thursday, we will have a video that will be 10 minutes or less. Yes, for me, 10 minutes or less. That's going to be extremely hard. Lori's going to have to probably speed it up, and I'll talk like the Micro Machines guy from the 1980s and 90s. But anyway, that will be on Thursday for our Constitution segment recap, where we will also share a PDF or slideshow or something of that nature that gives you some of these provisions right in the black and white, so you can see them and see some of these other things and concepts that we've been talking about. And then please join us on Friday for our freedom fighting tools, where we make at least 3 tools available to you in a post on Fridays. Saturday, of course, we have a Restore Freedom Goodie of the Week. Usually it's our friend and I'll say sales correspondent, Rachel Atwood, that advertises those in a video for us. Sunday, we'll have the biblical insight for this topic of the week. But don't forget to go over to Podbean or Player FM, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, SoundCloud, any of those. Find the Restore Freedom podcast, click that subscribe button, and start downloading or listening to our episodes and segment previews and Constitution segment recaps on there, as well as if you've just caught us on YouTube or Twitch or Facebook because the live came on and we just happened to show up, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button to this video, and go ahead and hit that share button and let at least one other person know about the topics that we're talking about today. Please make sure to go over to our website, restorefreedomkh.com. That's Restore Freedom, K as in Catherine, H as in Henry. You can thank my husband for that part. .com, and you'll be able to search for our most recent videos and posts and resources there. I'm still updating and creating that website, as I only have so much time in a day and I'm not a natural computer programmer or coder by any stretch of the imagination. And we will have a renewed Constitution app for you in the Google Play and Apple app stores by the end of the year. But if you go to your Apple app or Google Play stores, you can currently find the Restore Freedom app, where you will at least get to see the text of the U.S. Constitution and the Michigan Constitution, or you can bookmark and highlight in there. But again, one that is far better is coming to you soon, I promise. But also, don't forget, if you love any of the work that we're doing, go ahead and click to sign up for our newsletter that's available on our website. But also, go ahead and hit that Shop Donate tab at the top of our website and donate in any way that is workable for you, whether it's PayPal or Google Pay or Apple Pay, or I hate saying those two words over and over again, Google and Apple. But anyway, go to the link for using Cash App, or you can donate by check, cashier's check, however you would like. We would definitely appreciate the support, even if all you have is $5. That can help. Could you imagine if everyone who sees these videos on all these platforms donated even a one-time donation of $5? We'd be able to afford to keep going and keep doing this work, because we don't have sponsors. If you want to sponsor us, please reach out and let us know. Contact at restorefreedomkh.com. Yes, that would be contact at restorefreedomkh.com. You can send us an email. We would love to have your sponsorship for any of our segments or full episodes. But just a simple donation from an individual or business who benefits from the work that we do is greatly appreciated. But again, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure to hit that notifications button if you're watching in an app like YouTube, so you get notified when we go live. Thank you so much to all of you who support or participate in any way. And we look forward to seeing you the rest of the week and all the other things that we have to offer. So with that, have a wonderful day, everyone. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your week.